science, and technology presence. An interview with inventor James Scott to discuss telepathy technology and more. Sit back, relax your mind, and enjoy.
All right, hello, this is Mark Love, and I am here to interview James Scott.
How you doing, Mark? James?
I'm doing good. Very good, very good. I'm fortunate to be able to interview James. James has an array of skill sets. He has dabbled in pretty much everything that you would call the interesting or innovative or technological, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be a good interview, and I'd like to proceed. And I've got some questions already prepared for you, James.
We'll give it a good shot, huh?
All right, excellent. So let's see, for context, and I know you, but of course people watching this video don't. Could you just give a brief summary of your early, your youth, your adolescence? What made you interested in technology and this sort of phenomenon?
Oh, yeah. Well, I grew up in Satellite Beach, which is basically just 20 miles south of Cape Kennedy. And my father was an engineer at NASA, so he worked on the Apollo missions. And, as a kid, what kid doesn't want to be like his father? So once in a while, he'd take me up to the Cape with him, and I got to see, behind the curtains. So it was nice to go into that big, giant vertical assembly building, and you're just a little kid, and you're looking up there at all these massive machines and rockets, and it just was, mind-blowing. So obviously, I got hooked into technology, and from that point forward, I've always just gravitated toward technology, and always trying to learn more and explore more and get a grasp on what makes this world tick.
Oh, that's wonderful. So are you officially a Floridian, like by birth?
I was born in Tennessee, but pretty much your first memories are I've been in Florida my whole life, so that's all I know.
Oh, very good. All right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that with the NASA and the rockets, and I am a Floridian, but unfortunately I've never seen a rocket launch in person. So.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a shame. And then, beyond that, I know you've been into all sorts of stuff, computer programming, engineering. So you would say a lot of it just stemmed from your father and then branching into the myriad of different.
Oh, yeah. And you know what even really was strange is at one point I grew up on a farm out in Palm Bay, kind of west of Melbourne. And again, that's still near the Cape, but it was a 20-acre orange farm. And our neighbors had an orange farm, and the young man that lived there, they had a lathe and all kinds of equipment in their garage, and they were farmers, and they fixed all their own equipment, and they had a sixth grade education. These people were brilliant. I mean, they would fix anything, and they knew so much, all common sense, and I was always just blown away with how skilled and talented those people were, and the things that they could fabricate. Here we are, just kids, and he's welding. This kid's 14 years old, and he's welding, and he's building dirt bikes and stuff out of scrap dirt bikes, and it was just crazy, to see all these things that he would build on his lathe, and the guy was very inventive.
When James starts talking about the being like the rural ingenuity and innovation, so David Adair, that's who he's describing pretty much. If you don't know who David Adair is, he makes a great analog to what James is saying. David Adair's from West Virginia, and he started off with rockets. He was in the newspaper as a youth building these rockets, and his story's phenomenal. He ultimately builds giant rockets through NASCAR garage, actually. So he had access to that as a way to pursue his innovations. But same thing, rural ingenuity that ultimately resulted in giant rocket building. The story of David Adair is fascinating as well, so check that out if you haven't.
Maybe I should tell you that part of the story. It's now the year 1966. What came out on TV in the fall of '66? Star Trek. Would you believe what luck? The 4 farms that were around us, they were all trekkers. These farmers they're crazy about Star Trek. I thought, how cool is that? So they said, I told them, could I launch rockets? Rockets? Hell yeah, boy, you can launch rockets. So I got the front end loaders and went out and they dug this big earth pit, big enough where I could drive the car down in, the station wagon, haul the rockets down in there. I had a subterranean launch area. And cows are all the way around the perimeter and all looking down at me chewing. But if they ever saw me run out of the pit, they ran, stampede, they'd run because something blows up out of the pit. And believe me, that I had way more accidents than I had successes.
Also was something that once I saw that people can do this, that was something I found very interesting at an early age. Is like a lot of times we see things and it's glossed over. We don't know how it's made. We just are amazed that it is made. But once you get to see something being created by hand from the tools and the materials that we have, it kind of allows you to I would have to say, feel that comfortable that you can do it yourself. And that's, really what it's all about, is like, why wait for someone else to bring you that technology when you can make it yourself? If you have the idea and you visualize it, why not make it yourself? It's doable. People do it all the time.
That's a great point, James, and that resonates because that's what it takes. It's the interest and the drive more than anything. Yeah, indeed. All right, got another one for you. So in society, we see a lot of resistance to AI. I'm a professor at college level, and out of all subjects, English. So what's the easiest thing to do? Plagiarize or whatever. So, but that's kind of then the resistance side. And then we see a lot of uptake. We see other people like the scientist Gary Nolan. He's like, I use AI for everything, 100%. So what's your perspective on this emergence of AI? And I want to caveat that by saying, I know you've been in computers and programming from way before AI as we know it. So I'm looking forward to hearing your response on this.
Well, it is funny because I get a lot of pushback myself. I'm an artist as well, as you know, and I've been using a lot of AI art. And I tell you, the art community does not like AI art. But to me, I can't paint what AI can generate, and it's supposedly original. So if I give it a prompt and it creates a really cool picture like this background, if it makes that and nobody else has it, what's wrong with that? Why should I spend 2 weeks or a month making a painting to look like that, when I can just have it right now? I mean, yeah, sure, somebody might not have a job, but is it that important? It's just for our videos. So why can't I use these so-called throwaway pieces of art to enhance our visualization? But as far as the art goes, I get a lot of pushback on it, but I do like using it a lot. It's for design. It gives me a lot of concept. It's way better than anything that I can paint. So I'll just continue to use it, even if people don't like it. I do like it. And as far as code, I mean, writing, everything I've written, from resumes onto marketing pieces, if I run it through ChatGPT, it comes out with something way superior that actually sells and makes money. I mean, it's amazing how well ChatGPT does make a viable, try to think, motivating content. It's very useful. And when it comes to coding is like having a mentor right there. So if I have a problem with a function that's not working right, and I don't know why, I can copy and paste that function into ChatGPT and say, please debug this. And it will not only debug it, but it'll explain everywhere that I had messed up or what it did to improve the code. And then when I run it, 90 to 95% of the time it runs. It will run. May not do what I want, but at least it works. So it's like, wow, I can either get past that and move on, or say, hey, that was a cool technique that you used, and expand upon that and maybe make a different function based on what it gave me. So I find AI an incredible tool, especially for programming and coding. And I've written codes and languages now that I don't even know. I'm writing code, and it just blows me away what it's capable of doing at a very quick pace. And I can pick up the pace myself and learn a lot faster by using this tool. It's a great tool to have.
So for example, back in 2006 to 2008, I worked with you on programming, and it was brilliant. You programmed a way for us to get an email from a web page, like a discussion board, more or less.
Mm-hmm.
And from the email, which back on those days it was on my BlackBerry, I could just reply from a BlackBerry and say, like, yes, I agree with your point. And like, behold, it was posted on the web. So to put that into perspective, that was 20 years ago when you built that, and that was before anyone was doing that. What were your effort required to build that back then, and how would that look in today's AI-driven coding society?
It's funny that you say that, because another programmer told me that was probably the most valuable thing that I've ever created, and I didn't think anything about it. To me, it was a novelty. It was just using a syntax that the mobile phone companies use, right? And then I was just using their code to relay the email through the system so it would show up on your phone. And there was a 256 character limitation. So I wrote a little piece of code that would truncate the message down so that it wouldn't jam up the phone. But it was using their protocol, which was more or less a specialized email, an alias of your email address. But it was only, like, for instance, your email might have been your phone number at TME or T-Mobile.com or something like that. But you didn't know that. You'd have to ask them to find out. You can go to their site and ask them for that code. But once you had that email, you could just plug it in and forward the email to the phone, and it showed up. And everybody thought that was the greatest thing. Well, it turned out that that's exactly what Twitter was. That's what Twitter was basically the same thing. That's where it started. Yeah. So had I known what the ramifications of what I did was, I might be launching rockets into space right now. But
yeah,
nobody has a crystal ball. That's kind of a big stretch to pat myself on the back with. But it was, that's the thing. You have to look at you have to look at things from a different perspective and how can we optimize the tools that we have. So nobody really knew that there was this little cheat code out there, but I knew it. And it's like a brain surgeon. If he knows how to fix your brain, it's easy to him. He doesn't think much about it, but everybody else is like, wow, that's the greatest thing. But hey, it was just a cheat code to me. So, but it worked and it was fun. And that was the thought process behind that whole thing. Was just, and I had used it myself in real estate. So, I was using it to react to clients that went in the MLS and wanted to find out about properties, and I was getting those leads immediately. So, it's something I did make a little bit of money with it, but nothing to boast about.
Well, no, being resourceful is a talent in its own. Has AI merged with 3D printing yet? I hear in the background you've got something going. I presume that's some 3D printing. And
I'm printing some camera mounts right now, but no, I haven't used AI in 3D printing, but they do have the thing that drives a 3D printer is called G code. So you can actually ask ChatGPT to create G code for you, like make a G code ball, and it will create a ball in G code, and then you can print it. It'll have people have done that before, but you won't know what it looks like. It's it's kind of hard to tell what it looks like.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I'm for AI too, so I don't think you have anything bad to say about it, right?
Well, a lot of people think that it's going to take over the world. And what it's going to do, if anything. Think about like how when machines came out, how everybody was all upset about the Industrial Revolution and people are going to lose their jobs. But what happened was we got a lot more jobs out of it. Not only were people operating the machines, but there were people building machines, more high-level jobs, engineering jobs. So that whole premise that, your automation is going to take away the job of the burger flipper, yeah, it may, but who's going to maintain the machine that flips the burgers, right? So there's going to be a job for somebody, and who's to say that person, liked his job? Maybe he wants to do something better than flip burgers. So I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think that AI is going to get to the point where it's going to say, humans are a scourge of the planet. We're just going to whack them out. If anything, the emergence of AI, if it comes into a singularity where it becomes self-conscious, I believe it's just going to look at us like we're a bunch of amoebas and say, whatever, I got other things to do, and it's going to take off. It's not going to want to exterminate us. There's no game for it to exterminate us. It's just going to move on to another plane of existence or take off from the planet and go form its own planet somewhere. I mean, it's just not going to waste its time with us if it becomes a super intelligence. It's just like how we are toward our pets or a farm animal or even a squirrel outside. We don't just go and annihilate every squirrel in the world because it's inferior to us. That's kind of my thought process on that.
No, indeed, and I'll add one more. It's like my 19-year-old son, who he's smarter than me, so he's taking off. He's leaving the house,
Yeah, exactly. Why waste their time? It's like, I don't have time to argue with you. I'm not trying to change you. I'm just going. I'm out of here. So that's how AI is going to be. It's just going to leave us behind, and that's really what's going to happen.
No, great. All right. Well, we talked about the amazing tool through the cell phone systems. You talked about your real estate tool. What are some other cool things you've done?
Well, we've got this. You turned me on to this excess correlation, which is more or less like ultra MK mind reading stuff. And I read the paper. At first, I was like, oh, whatever. But when I read through the paper and there was a lot of math and science behind this technology, it really started me thinking. And they had given you the do-it-yourself, how to make the apparatus to conduct the experiment. I thought, well, what could it hurt? What could it really? How much time is it going to take me to fabricate this? And we'll put it together and let's go ahead and give it a good college try. Now, I did notice in his experiment there were a few things that I didn't like. I didn't like the fact that he only had sampled 15 people. I think that he needs to sample 150, maybe 1,500 people. So we need a bigger batch. We don't need, 15 people is just too small of a batch, or 15 experiments, I should say. And then secondly, I looked at the circuit, and I noticed that the circuit was more or less null. It made the LED blink, but there was no power going to the coil. It basically was deliberately set up to short, or not short, but open circuit. Like it was never energizing the coil. And I thought, well, they might have done that on purpose because maybe the guy didn't want to have a problem burning up someone's laptop, or because you were plugging it into somebody's expensive laptop, and if there was a short in the system or a feedback, it could have effectively messed up that piece of equipment. Maybe they didn't want the liability of that. So I went ahead and made a circuit that does energize the coil, and I also tested it so I could actually see the signal coming out of it. I used a little AM walkie-talkie, and you could hear it click, 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 like a Geiger counter, so it was coming. The frequency was coming through the device. So it's been verified that it does work. It actually does create the pulse that they prescribed. And I also isolated it with the Arduino using Wi-Fi, so it doesn't actually, it runs off a battery, so there's no chance that it can blow up your laptop. It's an isolated circuit, and you control it through Wi-Fi now. So I kind of did quite a few modifications to this excess correlation so that it's now a much more viable apparatus to do testing. And I'm hoping that we can get a lot of tests out of it, because if we can, it's going to be very stabilized. But yeah, we've got this device is coming together pretty well. Sorry about the cropping there, but you can kind of see what's going on.
And so for anyone watching this, that is basically a coil that's going to go around a person's head, and that's going to amplify, and not to, like James was saying, not to an extreme amount, but it's going to amplify, I guess we'd call it magnetic currents. Is that how you would describe it?
Yes, that's what they, so here's the whole apparatus right here. And this is a toroid coil. And again, this is not the best design. I have version 2 has so many more upgrades, but we need to test this first. And if this gives us any kind of results that we're looking for, the next version is probably going to blow this thing out of the water. And as you can see on the back here, we've got a microprocessor that runs off USB power, and you just hook it up, and Wi-Fi controls it, and we record all of the results on a computer. So it's very accurate and very stable.
The only thing you have to do really is you have to be in contact with whoever you're going to do the project with. That way both experiments have the same ID, and then when you save the setting, it creates an experiment. You save this setting, it logs you in as a different user. You can start the experiment. Okay, stand by, the experiment's starting. It'll stay in that mode right there until this guy starts the experiment. Okay, and if you go over here and type in whatever. And this one over here, see, now we got an image. Focus on this image. And I'll just type in what it was, a hut. Alright, so then it goes over here. Focus on this image. Old car. Sorry to be so slow. I'm trying to type with one hand and videotape with one hand. Hospital. So it's basically mixes between images and words. Okay, so when the test completes, you have a link at the bottom. It says to see results and start a new one or log out. And then if you hit see results, or you just type in results up top, so it's only got these results. But if you want to see one that was a full-on one, then it'll have all of the answers. And what it has is it has a textual description of whatever was in the picture. A pair of hands holding a camera. Okay. And then if you click on that, that's exactly what the idea here is, that we will be able to take this textual part and run it against AI to say, tell us how similar this answer is to this question. And then that way it'll give us
what James has designed is interface. So if him and I, for example, both have this apparatus, we put it on our hand and we say, are we ready to dive in? We go for it. We go to James's website, we open up the apparatus, and we have a menu of selections that's kind of like what's going to be the medium between us. And it has a way to test what is our, I guess you call it correlation. You know, are we in sync? How we're in sync, you know, that's the debatable thing. The original Dr. Persinger says you're in sync the same way the universe is in sync. To him, being in sync is an obvious thing. It's like, how can you not be in sync, right? Because everything's a cause and effect, reaction. And if you're tuned in, I mean, you're going to get it. Just like an FM radio can broadcast a signal, and whoever's tuned in is going to get it.
Hi, I'm Dr. Michael A. Persinger. I'm a professor of neuroscience, biomolecular sciences, and human studies at Laurentian University. We've made a great discovery, and we would like to share it with you. This discovery is a technology that allows potentially any brain on this planet to be connected to other brains. We've developed this technology with equipment that you can access, and we want to show you how to build it, because we want to bring science back to the individual, back to the hands of the average person. And we think everyone should own this. So let me show you how it works.
All right, if you don't mind, I can begin.
Please.
Okay. Okay, so I'm Michael Persinger, and I'm attempting to integrate all of the sciences into an understandable concept, literally from A to Z, from astronomy to zoology. And the approach that you just heard from the Master of Ceremonies, the idea of connectedness, is eminently sensible. There's quantitative evidence for it. There's also very good scientific evidence for it. And I think the critical thing would be if you just take the fact that 7 billion brains are immersed in the Earth's magnetic field. A simple quantification indicates that if the magnetic field connected them all, the change in one brain would be diffused to all the other brains within roughly quantitatively about 6 to 7 minutes. And that can be actually calculated. Now, whether it occurs or not, that's a different story. The other important feature about the human brain and the environment in which we have evolved is the fact that the strength of the magnetic field is associated with consciousness. Consciousness is associated with roughly about a 40 hertz, that is a 25 millisecond refresh rate. It's associated with magnetic field strengths are really, really small, about a picotesla, which is a decimal point followed by 11 zeros and a 1. And the Earth is the same thing. If we take a look at the fact that the Earth and around it is the ionosphere. In it is oscillating. These resonances produced by the global lightning, which is about 40 cycles per second, the same sort of basic frequency as consciousness itself. And actually the intensity of that strength of field is the same as well. And we have found, Dr. Soroka and his colleagues here have found that if we take an ordinary quantitative EEG of somebody that's a normal person sitting in the laboratory, roughly every 30 seconds for about a half a second, there's a marked coherence between that person's brain and what's occurring in the Schumann resonance, which goes all around the Earth itself. So that suggests that this has always been here, but how do you quantify it? Is there correlational data? Well, I think most of the what's called remote viewing and the psi phenomena that have been sadly dismissed or distanced for years, the idea that people separated at a distance can somehow transiently interconnect, is a phenomenon that's been certainly documented since Gurney's work in the 1880s. And so if you think about it, it makes eminent sense, and it's simple in the sense you have A and B, and something happens to A that produces a change in B, and for a moment they're highly correlated. In fact, that's what we call excess correlation. In other words, they should not be correlated because they're separated at such a great distance. It should be random. But when you have two events correlated in an excess way, then of course that suggests a different kind of mechanism is involved. And that's where non-locality comes in. So when we say locality, that means if I pick up my calculator and I drop it, the relationship between stillness and response is very evident. If I chat with my colleagues to the left or the right, you know about the fact there's a mechanism there in the sense that if I say something that influences their brain. But suppose they're separated at tens of thousands of kilometers. How do we explain that? I mean, it's still working the same way in the sense that there's a stillness, there's a response, they're highly correlated, or I should say at least they're correlated more than chance. And what we attempted to do was to develop a technology that used what nature does all the time. And we know there's a part of the brain, the right hemisphere, specifically the right temporal parahippocampal region, and two basic frequencies, 7 hertz roughly, and 40 hertz, which reflect what the Earth does anyway. And this kind of frequency and pattern in the brain is associated with memory and consciousness. So what we did is say, all right, let's devise a technique based upon everything we know and see if indeed we can enhance what's already there in all of us in a reliable manner. And that's where the technology comes in for the excess correlation. And that's, I guess, a very quick summary. And I let my colleagues.
So has this got your mind spinning on how this?
Oh yeah. What I'm starting to think as I research more and more about his, because he's got other videos out there. He's got a lot of data. He's been doing it for, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. And he passed away 7 years ago, but he left a lot of information. And what I'm finding is a lot of it actually overlaps with quantum entanglement. Okay, so what I'm noticing is that if his code, the way he set the pulse up, imagine if you have two waves and they're slightly out of sync. Sooner or later, those harmonics they're gonna dovetail, they're gonna synchronize, and that's what his pulse. I believe his pulse is doing. I believe his pulse is set up so that even if you start yours 2 minutes later than the other guys, sooner or later those pulses are gonna line up, and that's when you'll be able to have excess correlation. It'll almost be like an entanglement. So I'm thinking that with my new system, because it starts the internet within a microsecond, starts the frequencies, I'm thinking they're going to be more in tune, like continuously. I think you're going to get way better results because they're going to start almost as if they're quantumly entangled from the get-go. And I think that's going to make a big difference. So.
Yeah, with a technology like this, that, like you said, he died 7 years ago. He's worked on this project 20 years ago, and you don't hear anything about it. That always raises questions. I did read one study that came out of his project where someone took the device and they were gamers, and they said, I'm an expert gamer and here's a novice. We're gonna both wear these so we're synced, and let's see if this particular person catches on to the game quicker. And according to their data, he did. So why would something like this just disappear? That's the strangeness.
Well, I think the problem there is there really wasn't enough. I don't think there was enough evidence. I think 15 samples is not enough to make someone go, oh yeah, this was high-end results. You know what I mean? It's like probably people in the scientific community went, well, if you only did 15 people, you probably didn't get good results, and that's why he quit. And that's where we're picking it up. I think that if we can get 100 people to do this and get a bigger sample, then we can actually prove or disprove that this thing works. And if it does, then that's great. But his results, I think, were only 54%. That's really not a huge. It's just slightly over half. I'd like to see something like 65 to 70% correlation, as opposed to 50-50 is like it works or it doesn't work. And he was very close to that, and I think that might have been a turnoff to a lot of people because again, he didn't have enough samples. So I think he needed more samples. And I also think that the whole construction of this is really not ideal. A toroidal coil keeps the magnetic field within itself. We just need a normal coil, and then that field will be external, and that will have more effect. It doesn't need to be internal. So I think there's a lot of improvements that can be made on the next version. But this one, actually, you can read the signal. It comes out. You can hear it on a walkie-talkie. So it is there, but it's just very weak. And I think that we need to test it. That's all we need to do.
Oh, good deal. I have I have two points to make that you made me think of there. With remote viewing in the famous remote viewers, Ingo Swann, Pat Price, these people statistically, on average are at like 70% accurate. It's never 100%. And these are the world's best. So, and then the other thing is, if we think back to Dr. Persinger, when he was doing this, I don't even think Bluetooth headphones were available. And so, perhaps back then people were like, put this on my brain and see what it does. No, thank you. Right. But these days we put anything,
Oh yeah, we've got cell phones on our heads all day long. I mean, we're
Yeah.
putting magnetic fields up to our heads 24/7. So I don't think that a low frequency magnetic field is going to matter. And it does have Wi-Fi, but again, your phone has Wi-Fi. So if people aren't, having tumors grow out of their head, then I think we're fine. And the power is no different than anything else. And these devices, now they did have an Arduino that they were using. I don't know if they were using Wi-Fi Arduino, but these things have been around for a while. So I just don't think they took it that extra step. And I went ahead and spent, I think, nearly a month rewriting the code and redesigning the whole coils. I mean, you see, I've got it all 3D printed and stuff. So it's not, it's still kind of amateur, but at the same time, it's a lot more precision than what they had originally. So I think we're going to get way better results out of this than the original. It's very comfortable too. I think that in one of the reports they said that people were complaining about a discomfort, and I don't think it had anything discomfort from the experiment. I think it had discomfort because of the way that they put the thing on their head. Little rubber band thing was probably pinching around their head, and that would not be very fun.
That's the anxiety factor. I played a lot of soccer, and we had these patches like, well, if you get a bruise on your shin or something, put this patch on. Well, if it's made in the USA, great, thanks. If it says it's made in China, you're like, well, no. So there's definitely that psychological factor. Let's see. I also wanted to ask you, since you always have dabbled in whatever the leading edge technology is. That's an admirable characteristic of you. Like whatever's the leading thing, you've already been toying with it. Already been experimenting with it. Knowing where we are now, 2025, what do you see coming in the next 5 years? We're definitely in a technological ramp up since the advent of cell phones. You've seen. I mean, you were the first wave rider of the internet and programming. So. What does it look like?
I see that this AI has two things that a lot of people don't know about, but they're coming out. One of them has the ability to create a genome, like biology. It's able to sequence and identify genes at warp speed. It can make chemicals, it can make drugs. On the downside, like somebody said, the downside was they asked it to make a drug that was lethal to humans, and it made a drug that would kill everybody on the planet, with a quart of it would kill everybody on the planet. So, that's one of the downsides, but don't make it, don't make that stuff. Use the good stuff. And I just found one, I haven't installed it yet, but it does materials. So you can put in textual information, make a material that's stronger than steel, flexible like rubber, whatever. You put in the parameters, just like a textual prompt, and it will create the molecular, like give you, if you say make 100 of them, it'll make 100 different chemical compositions that have these characteristics. And the scientists have tested it, and they've actually built some of these chemicals through the processes that it prescribes, and the materials have the characteristics that perform the way they want, which is amazing. So they've made materials like ceramics that are stronger than steel. They've made all kinds of crazy stuff. So what I'm seeing is I'm seeing a revolution in material science will be coming because we have new tools that are going to explore these possibilities. You don't have to actually go through and heuristically make this alloy. That one didn't work. Add some more copper, make a new alloy, add some more of this. You don't have to. You can just ask AI to do it, and AI will run through its simulations and come out with a formula that will work. I mean, that's just an incredible leap forward for material science. And when you think about how that's going to apply to space, I mean, that's a whole new level for space travel and whatever. So, if you got, it's exotic out in outer space. The vacuum in outer space makes things bind together. So that's why you have meteorites in the first place, because those little sand particles get ionized and they collect together, and they not only just bounce into each other, they weld themselves to each other. So that happens in all of our spaceships too. The hinges and the things that move around, they get ionized and they get electrified, and they will literally weld themselves together. So they have to design these things very critically for space. And if you have materials that are immune to that type of thing, imagine now how much more robust your spaceships are going to be, that if they don't have to have that problem of fusion or vacuum friction or whatever. So I think that's a pretty interesting field that will be coming up in the very, very near future. That's going to be happening. And I also see some exotic propulsion systems coming out. I mean, the fact that you can 3D print one monolithic material, like look at the Raptor 3, how revolutionary that is. All of the components are internalized because they're able to 3D print all that stuff and design that stuff in a computer. So again, all this stuff is going to dovetail together. We're going to see a massive advancement in scientific and space travel and these type of things. They're doing quantum computers now. I don't know how that's going to pan out. You know, I mean, they say they've got it, but sometimes you hear reports that they don't have it. We've got nuclear fusion, but we don't have it. So it's probably on the brink of happening, but the commercial viability of it, that's a whole nother thing, because I don't know where it's going to go at this point, especially the quantum stuff, because if you only have 8 qubits to figure something out, it's not a lot of stuff to figure out. Even though it does it instantaneously, it doesn't really, you got to have a lot. You got to have millions of qubits to figure stuff out. So I don't know how long it's going to take them to get to that point.
Yeah, you got my head spinning there. You said a lot, and you know, one of the things is I'm remembering, like, well, yeah, this is true, but from the context of us, we're in the United States, you know, but we still, to enjoy these luxuries of what technology can give us, we still kind of need the whole world to come along, right? And that's such a big problem. I mean, maybe AI can you know, hey, make everybody get along, right? And it can do that, or it's kind of like, well, can we advance AI systematically? I mean, maybe the judge is having a bad day, but if the judge is the collection of everyone's mind and he's an AI, he's not going to have some, you know, one-off ruling that was just totally unfair and this sort of thing. So maybe, I don't know, maybe AI can dig into our social problems as well.
It's possible. It is possible. You know, sentiment plays a big role, even in law. I mean, they will bend the rules of law if something doesn't feel fair. You know, even though the law is black and white, it gets bent. We see it all the time, even in politics. You know, that's why these guys get away with what they get away with, because of sentiment. Well, they were helping the people. Well, yeah, sure they were helping themselves too. You know.
Yeah, tough. Space, I was watching, and not to get too much off topic, I watched an interview a couple weeks ago. It was Whitley Strieber, who's a famous author of both fiction and his own nonfiction abductee events. And he said something very interesting, because most of the people in this field of ufology and stuff, which it's hard to bifurcate that from technology, you know, because it's kind of like we have our known technology, like here's our NASA, and then we have the dreamers, you know, that have imaginary technology. But what Whitley Strieber said, and it was surprising, he said, I don't think humans are meant to get off this planet. And I honestly think we maybe should just quit trying. And I was surprised to hear him say that.
People don't understand. They think that, you know, space opera, we're part of the planet, like the trees and the flowers and the bugs and the bird. Correct. We are part of it. We're not separate from it. We feel, we you know, we get this ridiculous idea. This guy is saying Elon Musk wants to go to Mars and colonize Mars and stuff. It's not going to happen. No. You'll find out very soon that Mars is fundamentally inhospitable to human life, as indeed is deep space, because we are like a plant. We belong to this earth. We always will. Always. She created us. She gave us birth. She gave us life. And who knows? There's also the other side of the coin, that when we're not in the body, we can travel all kinds of places. Taking Earth with us. Taking her heart with us in our heart. If you go out of your body and you go to another world, you take Earth with you every time.
You know, clearly NASA's doing it, and we got this campaign to go to Mars, right? So what's your thought on that whole conversation?
You know, man, that starts back to the Big Bang, because when people talk about the Big Bang and that the universe started at an origin and expanded out, and it just makes me think, okay, well, if there's alien life and it was created, what do they call it? Panspermia or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
So if life created everywhere through this universe, then how did it get to us? Right. So if it got to us, like if we came out of nowhere, or are we a petri dish? Did all the other aliens say, you know, this is some bad genes that we created, but we want to see if they survive. We're going to go ahead and put them on this planet over here and see what they do. Let them fight it out, see which one comes out on top. If that's the case, I want to know how they got to us. How did they get and bring us and deposit us here? And if we are panspermia, and all the way that the grand designer God created everything, and decided that everybody is to be dispersed in such a way across the universe that they can never cross, they can never commingle. Well, that's why would you do that? Why would you say that? You know, as a creator, why would you not allow life to you know, interact with other life? We see it on our own planet. We see it happening here. We see, you know, all these different species and stuff. We interact with all these animals. I have a pet. I have a cat. Now, the cat doesn't try to kill me. I don't try to kill it. So I'm just wondering, you know, like you say, it's like how do we split those hairs? You know, that we're not supposed to leave here. Why? Why are we not supposed to leave here? Why are we not supposed to explore this universe? Are we the only ones in the universe? And if we ran across somebody, what would happen? Would we try to kill them? Would they try to kill us? Would we befriend them? Or would they even understand us? Or are they going to be like the AI and say, we don't even have interest in you. You're not even, we don't even care what you do. We've already done that, been there. We're onto something so much bigger and better. Just stay out of our realm. You know, I don't know what they're going to think, but it's deep, you know. So when you ask that question, I don't really have an answer for it, other than that it does make for good conversation.
No, I respect your response. You know, it's interesting. You're not one to jab and say this is the way it is and that's how it is and I'm right. You know, I like your response. It's true. You understand all perspectives and you're still no answer. I have a closing question for you. And speaking of the different species and interacting, and also speaking of excess correlation and knowing your love for your cat, and clearly you and your cat communicate. I mean, is it possible you could excess correlate and like possibly like communicate with your cat in a deeper way through this same technology? Is that
It's probably more possible to do that with a cat than it is a person, because they don't have 100 things to think about to distract them. Because one of the things that all of these technologies, ultra MK, I don't care if you get into an isolation chamber, all of it comes down to that we are sensory overloaded, right? So you have to get into a meditative state for any of this stuff to work, any of it. If you want to access the Akashic record, whatever you want to do, you have to be in a certain state of mind. I imagine that animals have an easier access to that Akashic record, that field, whatever you want to call it, that nirvana, than we do, because we're so like overwhelmed. And I don't know, that could be deliberate. That could be the Roman circus that the government society has set up so that we are distracted, that we don't see all these things, that we don't have the access because we're being polluted all the time. So in order to get to that point, yeah, you got to clear your mind. This device here may actually just be, like you said, the Band-Aid from China. It may be the Band-Aid from the United States that you put on there. It's like, oh, this is what I need in order to calm my mind, in order to see these things. It may have absolutely no purpose other than a placebo effect, just to make you think you're there. And if that's the case, and the pineal gland and all those other things that they talk about take over, and you are able to communicate on another level, on another dimension, well, so be it. You know, I'll paint it purple if that's what makes it work. I don't care. You know, I mean, I think if the cat can do it, you know, I never really thought about that, but I'm glad you mentioned it, because, you know, I've been having a hard time finding someone to test subject this with. So maybe I'll just have to get my cat. Come here, kitty. I got some treats for you. Let me see what they taste like.
Oh, that's great, James. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for the interview. Look forward to learning more from you, especially with this experiment. I'll definitely volunteer and throw one on. I have no compunction. I've had enough cell phones to my head since they came out. So once again, appreciate the interview.
Thank you. Well, thank you likewise, and it's good talking to you, Mark.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.